Enter semantic technologies. And by the way, I include semantic technologies as part of data science, okay? And I'll explain why in a moment. Semantics has its origins in philosophy. It's generally understood as the abstract study of meaning, okay? So Edmund Husserl in 1900-1901 wrote this great 2-volume book called The Logical Investigations, and it was the first real treatise on formal ontology, okay? You also have a host of other philosophers, Kant to Heidegger, who talk about things like being, and they talk about how we understand things. It really has to do with meaning. What do we mean by our data? What are the concepts that are in there? What are the things you're using that data for? What does the data represent? It's distinguished from syntax. This is an important distinction. Syntax are the markings or the language someone uses as a rule-based grammar, right? So the letters we use in the English alphabet versus the different characters you use in Arabic or in Russian or something like this, that's syntactic, right? XML versus RDF is syntactic. It's just a syntax. It really doesn't matter. What you care about is the meaning behind what you're representing. So if I ask, what do we mean by Washington? Well, we have a president. We have a city with some nice monuments. We have a state that, by the way, is on the complete opposite side of the country from the city with the nice monuments. There's a bridge I can take in New York. There's a football team that has an inflammatory logo that people talk about a lot. There are people like Washington who played for the Jets. And then there's a baseball team who does not have an inflammatory logo that many people talk about, right? So all these things mean Washington. So what do you mean? How do we use the word Washington? I mean, how do we ever do this? Well, it's because of context. If we're talking about presidents, then we know we're not talking about bridges and monuments and things. However, presidents have something to do with Washington, D.C., right? So Lincoln was a president, and Lincoln has a monument, so you can talk about Lincoln as the president or the monument, right? But it's about the context. It's about pointing at the thing and saying, what do you mean? And when we talk, we use lots and lots of cues for these things. The key for this in semantics is you have to build these cues into the models that go into your systems. This is why it's not about just top-down, bottom-up approach. Okay? That to me is very old thinking. It's both. Application-based formal ontologies. I published a paper on application-based formal ontologies back in 1999 and said, look, you have to work from the top down and the bottom up at the same time. That's what engineering is. So if we look at the evolution of these items, right, we see that code used to be more important than data. Then you hit the relational data model era. Data became as important as code. And now, thanks to the semantic web era, the data is more important than the code. It doesn't matter what it's written down in anymore. I can take my RDF, I can turn it into XML, I can shoot the file over to someone else, they can open it up and then reconvert it back into RDF if they want. Doesn't matter. What matters is, did the class structure stay in place? Are the relationships still labeled the same? Is the hierarchy the same?